All right. Hello, everybody from my side. This is Leah from the Open and Agile Smart Cities Secretariat. So as I could hear, Bart is here on the phone. Martin has joined us. Davo is sitting with me in the office. And most or many of the participants have also joined. So my proposal is to, start. Slowly but steadily. And I just walk you through the agenda of today. And I hope everybody can see the screen. If you cannot, just let me know. We will start with a brief welcome from Bart Rousseau. We will then go into a short, brief history of OASC. How did we end up with the minimal interoperability mechanisms? And Martin Brinskop will walk you through. And Davor Meersman will then explain briefly what are the minimal interoperability mechanisms and what are the next steps. And I will be then here to present the voting process that we have planned and prepared, and how you can provide feedback in the next 4 weeks. And then, we close the meeting, and we hope to manage all this in 16 minutes. So if I'm right, Bart is on the phone?
Yes, I am.
Yes, and I would hand over the microphone to you.
Thank you very much. Hello and welcome, everybody. In a little while ago, in the meeting of the council, the first MEMS were presented, and also the ambition of the network to put forward those minimal interoperability mechanisms as a very useful instrument. And then we thought, okay, if this is a very tangible product and result of the work in this that this network is doing, I think it will be beneficial that we as a council and as a network give our approval to those MIMs for 2 reasons. A, that this is a product which is supported by the whole network, and also to give the right credentials to the products which are being produced. So that's why we came up with the idea of presenting the work on the MIMs to this council, and that this form of webinar is a great tool to inform everybody what's in there, and then we can approve this, and then it can, with the full support of the network, be communicated. So as an introduction, I think that's the most relevant thing I can say. So back to the people who actually did the work and can put some more light on the MIMs at hand.
Thank you very much, Bart, for this welcome. And in order to be quick and save time, I'll hand over to Martin. Martin, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Leah, and thanks, Bart, for the nice introduction. I will do this quite briefly, I think. But just to pick up on your notion of, let's say, where does the mandate come from in establishing something which is helpful to basically every city and community on Earth? Well, it seems quite obvious that it can only come from a lot of representatives from those places. So I think the exercise that we have embarked on with the Open Agile Smart Cities initiative, now the network, is really to, on the one hand, establish that mandate, and then on the other hand, actually develop something useful. I think since we started talking about this, perhaps 5 years ago, there was something called the Connected Smart Cities Network, which was a loose organization. It actually still exists. I happen to be the chair of it, of the board of the Connected Smart Cities Network. And among a lot of actors, primarily in Europe, there was this realization that projects and developments, pilots more or less were contributing or potentially contributing to bringing the world forward, now facing all the digital challenges. But it seemed difficult actually to find a common ground. So down the road, and I think everybody who's working in a municipality or an organization which is big enough to have sectors or verticals or silos inside it knows that I mean, in order to work across domains, in order to work across organizational cultures or even real cultures, different geographies and so on, maybe even political landscapes, whatever cuts across needs to be something quite small, because the world will never agree on something very complex and encompassing. So the idea of having interoperability, wow, great. And we need interoperability for several reasons. I will come back to that briefly. But in order to achieve that, and looking at what has so far been failing, these very complex, ambitious initiatives to provide a reference architecture or a full model or something to describe how everything could work, why not do the opposite? Why not find out what is the minimal that could work? So this is where the minimal comes from. In order to be open for everyone, in order to be agile, to adopt new technologies, to be responsive to concerns, so we're looking for some mechanisms. This is the word that has now appeared, which are quite small. So the next question becomes, which parts of this complexity is then the essential parts? And this work has come out of, I would say, global contributions to understanding technical architectural model frameworks or framework models. So how do you even design technical architectures, and what are the salient parts? So the notion of interoperability points has come up, that it seems that some of these points are adopted widely. I mean, USB, Wi-Fi, even on the commercial side, the Visa clearinghouse for payments. Some of these mechanisms have just turned out to be central. So I would say with colleagues from around the world and many initiatives, that element of interoperability points has been established quite solidly. However, what was then baked into that was immediately then also specification of those points. So it was like the point was also the definition of, let's say, the Wi-Fi or the USB or some technical specification. So what we have done in shaping since the early days of OASC is that we have dissociated the points and the mechanisms. And I think what we are convening around today is to ensure that we actually think that these points and mechanisms that are now on the table, so Dava will come back to the specific ones, are actually central and essential. So just a very slight bit of practical specification history. Initially, and this is what you have all signed up to, actually these principles, as they were called in the beginning, relied on what was needed in order to do anything in any system in any domain. So we needed some kind of data storage, and everybody were using CCAN, so why not? So CCAN turned into something more generic. There's a specification called DCAT for storage and for accessing data, and that has just become the de facto baseline. So just to give this example, that we started from basically what everybody was using as a baseline, and now, well, the vision was, and then we will evolve this baseline. It's just taking very long to get to the point of evolving, because we did not have the structure, to establish the mandate. who evolves? Is it just like anybody who runs fast, you know, a little group or whatever? How do we get the sweet spot between front runners, ambitious people who are mindful of the challenges ahead of us, and then doing something which actually resonates not just with a little core group or smaller core group or bigger core group, but actually pretty much everyone. And that's taken some time. We incorporated this year with OASC, and that was the decisive step, getting the council together really as the you could say the seat of the mandate, the board more like stewards to ensure that the whole operation actually runs smoothly. So from the original baseline of CCAN, we used CDSDK as the APIs and data models, and the NGSI context information API. We have now evolved. On the other hand, we have not evolved so much that we feel that we can, and this is reflecting the board and the council leadership, we are not yet at the point where we can say, okay, so here are the specifications, here are all the data models, here's the APIs to make it all work. But what we can do is that we can decide which are the fundamental elements that we will specify now in the process. So please see this as a staged process where we get like the big picture in place first, and then we move to the finer details after the General Assembly in January. So one thing I want to give back, let's say, to the legacy, you know, the name, the Open Agile Smart Cities is also, I would say, co-created from earlier contributions. There was an initiative in Finland called Open and Agile Cities, which then was graciously given to this initiative from the Finns and from the ecosystem around Helsinki. So I think this is a very nice image to bear with us as we move into now the very concrete process of creating some minimal mechanisms that are useful globally. We will all have to contribute. Sometimes we will all contribute something that we feel is quite specific to us. But if it's really helping also the world move forward, including solving the issues we have more locally, I feel that the spirit that is now collected around the OASC initiative is that we will share. So I think I will end there and invite your comments. Davor and Leah will guide us through the process. We will meet physically, hopefully, if not all, then most of us in January, and we will take this forward. I have a very good feeling about both the spirit and the robustness, actually, of these fundamental mechanisms and concepts around this. We can talk more about what is the validation that is behind, but actually in the large-scale pilots that we are seeing, you know, across everything from the large-scale pilot program, the Smart Cities Lighthouses, the initiatives from China, Japan, Korea, India, US, Latin America, Africa. I think really it is already established that we need to have these mechanisms. The question is which ones and on whose mandate. So I think this is the baseline we start from today. It's certainly not finished after today. It will not be finished in January, but it's a process which is ramping up, and I would say really already validated by many of the global initiatives looking into this. So thank you very much for coming, and I give the floor back to you, Leah.
Thank you very much, Martin. We will now move on to, well, a slide that many of you might have seen, or slides or concepts that many of you might have seen already. But Davor will explain this now again in more detail. And then, yeah, I'll hand the floor to Davor.
Thank you, Leah. So I'm sitting right next to Leah, so my name pops up as Leah as well. So just a word on the common technical ground, and Martin made a very nice bridge to kind of the place where a lot of the initial vision of OASC is being put to, well, the rubber is being put to the road there, which is then, of course, the Synchronicity project. So there we have a group of cities, and then, of course, the kind of the third parties around those cities, as well as the linked cities through OASC or other networks, collaborating on establishing a first version of what is eventually or what will be the final vision of OASC, which is this digital single market for smart city data and services. So out of that project, a lot of very interesting insights have evolved and also come out. So why do I use come out? Because, well, there is in a certain sense a duality where OASC is the neutral stage, the place where basically the agreements, the minimal agreements between the cities are happening, are taking place, are being consolidated. So the OASC brand there is focused on this neutrality, the demand side of the whole exercise, and also, and this I think relates very much to the nature of this meeting, the consensus. So the fact that we are demand driven doesn't just mean we emanate from some cities. No, it means that we are a group, a conglomerate of cities who are organized through a governance, and out of that governance come these mechanisms that we think are the way forward to establishing this global perspective. So the key instrument, as Martin explained, are the minimal interoperability mechanisms. So currently 3 key MIMs in short are identified. I will go over the list 2 slides further down the road. So the 3 key MIMs are context information management, common data models, and the ecosystem transaction management, or what used to be called the marketplace API. And then these MIMs, there has already been a reference implementation in Synchronicity based on Fireware. We also, as most of you will know, have closed the open call, and will soon be announcing kind of the first set of expansion, not only in terms of usage by these third parties linking up to city infrastructures, but also other cities. So basically expanding the platform that Synchronicity is turning out to. Also infrastructure wise, so there is indeed also a cloud hosting option there. So but you see that kind of the knowledge and the essence lies within OASC, and then the implementations, there is a Synchronicity reference implementation, and I'm sure there will be and we know for a fact there are other reference implementations currently underway based on the same MIMs. So that, I think, is a key message, is that the MIMs are separate from the actual implementations, and we welcome diversity, because that will be the only way to kind of try to tame this beast, being the global smart city market, and get all these advantages out of the interoperation of the various components. So I've mentioned we have the cities within Synchronicity, and now also through the open call an expansion of these cities who are already today implementing or very close to implementing the set of MIMs. Within the network, we have other cities who have independently from that let's say ecosystem of Synchronicity also started their journey towards if we can call it digital transformation, or at least in the interoperability sense. So it's a staged process. So basically, the first MIM being the context information management allows a city or a third party connecting to us, to the ecosystem, to basically pull in and exchange and provide, so exchange context information. And of course, in the smart cities domain, everything pretty much is context, so it's an essential part. Now, if you want to automate that, basically have well, systems and intelligent agents process and work with that data, you'll need to align data models. So currently within Synchronicity, those are FiWare data models, which are in turn based on other data models that are again used also by other cities throughout the world. So you know, there's this exercise of alignment. So I think in the data model space, we will see probably a very fruitful discussion in, let's say, the next year or two, in terms of well, how cities will actually be exchanging data, considering, you know, the kind of the business logic is here now to start exchanging that and the solution. So that will drive, I think, a lot of the alignment. And then, well, once you have the context information management and the data models in place, you need some kind of a transaction layer where, you know, you can either extract monetary value out of providing data, because, you know, not all data is open data. It can be closed data that you make available through some means, so that you can either as a city derive a monetary value from, or you can regulate the way it's being used. For example, the local ecosystem gets it for free, whereas larger tech players would have to somehow pay a price. So that kind of regulates that and kind of the market mechanisms around the data and the services that become available. So in a sense, it's a ladder where you go through three stages. And once you've implemented the transaction MIM, or you are there. So you in a primitive version, but hey, we are all you know, at the first stages of this global revolution. So that's the aim for now. So that I think is the story. So this is the table. I think most of you have seen it already. We have presented it many times. So the three most important MIMs, there are two other ones that I will also discuss. So as said, are the OASC Context Information Management MIM, the OASC Data Models MIM, and the OASC Ecosystem Transactions Management MIM. So I'll just go over the content briefly. You'll notice that some content is in black and the other is in gray. That's just to provide a kind of a visual signal that the discussion we are having now is on the black part, so really on the principle, on the MIMs, rather than the actual references that they are relating to. Of course, we want discussion and feedback on that, but the voting will actually, so in January, will be on the MIM, the point, and the description, and the references. That will always be kind of a dynamic part that we discuss and kind of update as we go along based on the needs of our growing network. I think it's the only way to do it. So the OASC Context Information Management MIM has this interoperability point, which is the Context Information Management API. And that API allows to access real-time context information from different cities. The references there are the currently we have the Synchronicity reference architecture for IoT-enabled smart cities. So you'll see if you look at that or go and consult that deliverable, kind of the specifications of that particular implementation of that MIM. That in turn relates to various standards and baselines, being the ETSI NGSI LD preliminary API, OMA NGSI, and the ITUT SG20 FGDPM work. We have, through discussions, also been made aware that other baselines are also valid there. In case our valued members have such suggestions, please provide those through the feedback process, because I think it's quite important to get a good scoping of the how to call it, of the provenance, if you want to call it that, of these various references. So we're quite happy to have that openly and transparently. But I think the feedback process there is the tool to do it, as it provides an equitable opportunity to all. Then the OASC data models MIM. So those are the common or the shared data models. So that's eventually will be a catalog of data models that are being used in the various verticals to enable the interoperability between applications and systems among different cities, and of course the wider ecosystem around those cities. So not, of course, the cities themselves as entities, but then the third parties as well. There we have two documents, two references for you to consult. So those are also coming from the Synchronicity project. We invite you to go through them in detail and provide any feedback you might have. So references there are the FIWARE data models, which are currently being used and updated, if I'm not mistaken, for the Synchronicity project, GSMA, schema.org, SAREF, and then the data models stemming from the Synchronicity reference zones, but also the data models that might be, well, have a significant adoption within the network that is not part of Synchronicity. So I think the data models alignment and kind of elicitation exercise is really a collective exercise where we would invite our member cities to catalog or in some way operationally kind of bring to bear the various data models they are using that might be of use to other cities. And we are looking for ways in which, after the General Assembly, in which we can kind of operationalize that, whether that be through a working group or other ways, to kind of get this discussion going, and out of that discussion get some kind of a operational infrastructure, if you want to call it that aligns with the governance of what we have already today in the Council of Cities. We have then the OASC Ecosystems Transactions Management, MIM. It's the interoperability point there is called the Marketplace API. That exposes functionalities for that data and service management, such as catalog management, ordering, revenue management, service level agreements, and it's also complemented by marketplaces for hardware and services. So the best examples of that today are within the Synchronicity projects. There are partners who have built excellent interfaces that are quite easy and user-friendly to consult. So I think they're a very good place to explore them are actually these marketplace user interfaces, which are great. So their related baseline is the TM Forum API. So those are the three key MIMs. And then we also have of lesser importance, or at least not as critical MIMs. So two kind of infrastructure MIMs or stuff you need anyway. So that's the security MIM, where the point is interoperability point is a security API, and that registers and authenticates users and applications in order to be able to access OASC-enabled services. So it's kind of a user authorization system that has a reference implementation also in Synchronicity and is based on the OAuth 2 baseline. Then the storage MIM is data. There the point is a data storage API, and that allows to access historical data as well as near real time data of the OASC cities. And there again, the reference is the reference architecture developed within Synchronicity. And the baseline there are the ETSI, NGSI, LD, DGAT, AP, so CCAN. So that is the kind of state of the MIMS, and as said previously, it's the three first columns. Those are the first steps. Now, what have we done? Where's my slide? So those are the first. That's already the last slide. Okay, so those are the first step, and in a sense, it's and that's kind of the last message I'd like to provide is, in a sense, it's a really important thing as well now, and also somewhat historic, at least in terms of our organization. The work we started is now quite concrete with reference implementations and kind of the principles and these references are separated, and that logic that exists, and the cities in the future. So after the initial vote in January, so the new entrants to the network, they will then agree to that initial state of things. So the things we vote on now as cities, that's the mandate that we then have. So when a new city enters, they will have a look at what the collective of cities has voted up to that point, agree with that, and then of course agree to agree. So I think that's kind of the main change, is also that we're really putting the governance and the council into action, and it will be agreeing with what the cities have agreed so far, and then agreeing with the governance on how to evolve in the future, ensuring that we will be the network and the cities. Well, we will be the parties who build this the global market for smart city data and services from the demand side out. So that's quite a unique thing, and I think this combined with of course the vote about it are the two first steps. So that's all I had to say there.
Okay, thank you, Davor. I think we have received maybe some questions already, or you might have some questions right now. Yes, we have received them, and you can ask them via the question box that you can see, and we will address them orally in this now in the next 10 minutes. We don't have a lot of space for questions, unfortunately, but we'll try to address all the question that you have. Okay. And also I will address all issues regarding the voting in the next slides. So there is an overview of how the voting takes place. All right. So the first question was by Juanjo Hierro, and he asked, I don't know if you can...
Maybe for clarification, would it be an idea to give an overview of the coming process before we take the questions? I think maybe some of the questions relate to the process. So maybe we can take questions as a block in the end, just a suggestion.
Yes, we can also do that. So basically you can post your questions right now. I will go through the voting process right now. And after I explained how the voting process works, we will address the questions that might be concerning the MIMS, concerning voting processes, and so on and so forth. I hope that's okay for everybody. So what we planned is a feedback period, and what you can see now is the timeline for that. So basically there is, from today on, there will be a 4 weeks of feedback period where you can provide, as Davor mentioned, feedback on the MIMS, but also on the standards and the references and everything. Then we take the time over Christmas and New Year's to provide you with to assemble a consolidated feedback report, which will be sent to you, to the cities, on 9th of January. And we will have the live voting then, preferably physical, of course, but for those who cannot join in Brussels, online. So everybody will be able to vote on 16th of January, and then we announce the outcomes of this vote on the next day during the Connected Smart Cities conference in Brussels.
Yeah, just a small word on the feedback process. So the consolidated feedback report, there will be a public part, so that will be kind of the summary of all the feedback. We will kind of categorize it and analyze it and so forth. And then we will also, as an annex for transparency, publish the so the feedback with the name also of the people giving the feedback and so forth, just so we know who stands where in the network. That part will be accessible only to the members. It's just so that we have a good idea of where everybody stands and so forth, and to be transparent.
Well, yes, and basically we expect all members, all cities, all council members of the Council of Cities to provide feedback. And you can send feedback via email by 21st of December to my email address, leah@oascities.org, with the subject feedback MIMS, so I can sort it out more easily. That would be fantastic. So the feedback, what can you provide feedback on? So basically Davor just explained it, but just again, there's 2 parts you can provide, 3 parts you can provide feedback on. It's the MIMS that Davor just presented. So MIM 1, 2, 3 to shorten it. But you can also provide feedback on the gray part of the table, so the references and the standards and baselines, which are, well, not yet up for vote. And you can also make suggestions, comments, and opportunities concerning the MIMS. So how would you like to go forward, for example? Anything that you would like to share with us, you can share with regards to the MIMS by sending an email, and let's just show it again. Send an email to me by the 21st of December to my email address with the subject feedback MIMS. But I will follow up after this webinar with all the cities, with all the cities, to make that very clear that there's this feedback process, and to make sure that everybody knows how to provide feedback. So this will be sent on Monday when everybody's back from the weekend. So for transparency's sake, and also Davor mentioned that already quite briefly, so the consolidated feedback report will be shared only with the members. But we would like to, not we would like, but we will publish all emails that we receive, so all feedback emails that address this issue here will be published as an annex, and we will also publish the names who sent these emails in the report, in the annex, and we will store the feedback emails for records. We just want to ensure full transparency in this process among our members. So that's the reason for this. And yeah, exactly. So the transparency issue is should be guaranteed by this. The voting process, and I've seen that Hannah, for example, has a question on this, and I hope this addresses everything. Each chapter, each national network has 1 vote. So each network coordinator votes on behalf of the cities within 1 chapter. This has been also happening earlier this year when we elected, or when the Council of Cities elected the representatives, and it worked quite well. For the reference, I attached here in this document the list of the national network coordinators, which is publicly available on the website. So for all the cities to check, if they don't know, I hope they know who is the national network coordinator. Sometimes there are 2 or more coordinators. Those chapters need to designate who will vote on behalf of the chapter, and they have to do so by the 9th of January, and well, tell that to me, but I will follow up in case they do not do that. So I will be in charge of this process here. And again, I would like to raise this with all network coordinators. Please align with the member cities of your network. That's important. This email, the video, it will go out to all member cities. And it's just the most crucial part that every city knows what you as a network coordinator are voting on. I just want to highlight this here. And then again, as we said before, the voting will then take place on the 16th of January, the day before the Connected Smart Cities Conference, when we also organize the Council of Cities Forum and the General Assembly here in Brussels. It will be an online tool, the same one that we used to elect the representatives of the Council of Cities and to the BOD. It's the election runner, it worked perfectly fine. And we hope to see as many of you as possible in the General Assembly in person, but those who cannot attend will be able to vote online. So yeah, that's it from my side. And I think we should address the questions now. So if you haven't already asked your question, please do it now. And I see we do have a lot of questions. So we go just one by one. And I don't think that you can see them. So I read the questions out aloud and say who asked the question. And then either Martin or Davor or Bart will address these questions. Yeah. So first question was by Juan Trujillo, as I already said. And he asked, well, you said it needs to be identified what mechanism, whose mandates. What do you mean by the second? So whose mandates?
I think there was a remark Martin made.
Yep, I think so. So just very quickly, and I invite Bart as the Council of Cities coordinator to reflect also. I think it's quite clear now, and I'm very happy that we have a clear structure for OASC. So the governance structure is so that we have a Council of Cities, which are all the member cities, all the ones that have signed the letter of intent. For each country or territory, in some cases, there is one elected representative, and those are the ones who can vote on things. Actually, we do not give any clear instructions or any instructions at all how to elect this representative in a country or territory, but we ensure transparency by informing all members that there has to be one, and when we get information that one has been selected, we will share with all members the name of this person and register on the website. So actually, it may be would be helpful perhaps if we gave some guidance on how to elect and how to. I mean, we could have like bylaws for local chapters, if you will. We don't. At this point in time, we don't. We should probably develop those. I mean, that would be up to the council and the board. So that's one side of the shop, if you will. The board are the partners who formally and by the bylaws are accountable for the operations and can, are setting up the secretariat and keeping the lights on and so on. So it's actually a very good question in this case. I think, Juanjo, on whose mandate will these elections take place? And it's actually quite simple. And I think it's also natural giving the introduction and the vision for what OASC should bring. The mandate is needed from the cities. And you could say essentially or conceptually from all cities. This is the voice, the global voice of the local communities towards the global market. So that's where the mandate comes from. So by logical extension, decisions on the minimal interoperability mechanisms cannot be made without a majority vote, a positive majority vote in the Council of Cities. So one vote per country or territory. It also needs to be adopted by the board. We are a young organization, so we are not that yet, if we will ever be something established as an intergovernmental or global NGO organization. We are not yet. So it's to ensure some stability that we have this, if you will, two-chamber approach. So what the mandate comes from the fact that the Council of Cities can veto by a vote what is put forward as the next version of the MIMS. So can the board. This is necessary in the beginning. It was felt by the founders. But the board cannot move something forward if the cities put the thumb down. So I hope this is both a clear and logical structure, also to explain to newcomers, to those who stumble across OASC, okay, interesting, a network of cities, you have a council of cities. On which mandate have you created these MIMS? And this will be the explanation. It represents what the council and the board did not veto, okay? And by extension, I mean, the board has set this up, has spent quite a lot of time and resources to pursue the opportunity to have even a voice of the cities, of the demand side from local side, very, very focused on these technical mechanisms, which is a unique forum globally. So, of course, it would be unthinkable to have MIMS that was not mandated by the Council of Cities. So, Bart, I don't know if you want to share a few thoughts on this as well.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think basically I'm very happy with the question indeed. I think what we are doing now is acknowledging the vote, the say that the cities have in the whole proceedings of OASC. But based on these questions, I will steer a little bit away from the topic at hand, but that we can talk about in the council of how should we make clear how cities can be involved in all of this, so that a more structured way of acknowledging this could be helpful, but without making this a top-heavy organization with a lot of bylaws. But because we need this flexibility. But I also understand from the question that some kind of clarity on how the involvement of cities is organized might be welcome. So, but I think that's something we can ponder in the works of the council, in dialogue, of course, with the board. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Davor, do you want to respond to, I think we just take the questions from the top. That was your proposal.
Yes, I think we need to make haste a little bit. So for the FiWare NGSI as a baseline, as well as the CEF context broker, that I think we discussed that already in a previous meeting. So what I would suggest, Juanjo, is just to shoot us an email as feedback for the process, so that we can just consolidate it in the report and then include it in the baseline. Then indeed,
what was the question?
Sorry,
because no one sees the question.
Two questions of Juanjo, well, suggestions. So FiWare NGSI version 2 should be as so listed as a baseline with regards to related standards and baseline associated to the OASC Context Information Management MIM, yeah, and then or API it said, and then also the CEF context broker should be added, again linked to the same MIM. So that those are two separate comments from Juanjo, and therefore also the suggestion to include that as feedback to the MIMs, just so that we can add it to the record, if you don't mind, Juanjo. I think that's.
Please just summarize all your comments that you have in an email. Send it to me as explained in the slides, and we will report everything and consolidate everything in the feedback report, and we'll consider everything.
Yes.
to be changed and added.
Yeah. Then we have a comment or a question from Hannah, who asks, will there be a vote per MIM or to approve all of them at once? We suggest to do a vote for each MIM, as I suppose that will also be the process in the future, should we, for example, want to add a new MIM, so they are to be considered separately. Then a question from Juanjo. What would it mean to sign the LOI for a new OASC city which joins, and what does a change mean for OASC cities which are already in? So there actually is no change to the LOI, not the or to the legal standing of the LOI that has been circulated. So those remain valid. We are working, or we will release a new LOI where the concept of the MIMS is more prominent, but it will be identical in that sense to the previous LOI. So Juanjo, the cursive texts, so those are actually then the reference implementations of the non-cursive text, which are the MIMS. So that's essentially what we are evolving towards. So to answer the question, to sign the LOI will be just have the same standing as signing the LOI has had up until this point. So although the kind of the structure will change, and we of course need to adapt and evolve as an organization, everything remains valid, and that's essentially something we've been quite keen to support. So the fact that the current and future LOIs are quite compatible. Then a question: who votes individual OASC cities, or one vote per country? I think that was before Leah clarified that indeed it will be one vote per country, although we do expect that the cities, of course, are sufficiently informed and are able to formulate a joint position that carries the vote of the coordinator in the process. Yeah.
Just to be clear, we don't have a formal process for this, but we expect a local vote. I think that would be the expectation, that all members actively vote on these things, and then the consolidated results then form the national vote. This is the expectation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. A question from Alexandra. Can you share documentation to help us have an opinion and send feedback? Yes, we will indeed do a very lightweight document. So basically just outlining the slides of today, essentially. So the MIMS table, and then also include the references, reference documentation to the of those implementations that we would include as well, so that you can consult them and provide feedback to that. That being said, the vote is not on the reference documentation. It's just for understanding kind of.
And just to let you know, everybody who's now in the call, all documentation will be sent by Monday. So it will not be sent today, but I will follow up with you, with everybody in the network by Monday, with the video, with the recording of this meeting, with the slides, with the document, as Davo just said. So there will be information available.
Yeah.
And just to make clear, so what you also said, Davo, you have just seen the documentation. That's it. It's like when you have a national vote on something, you don't vote on a book. You vote on a question. So do you vote to adopt MIM 1? Yes or no? Do you vote to adopt MIM 2? Yes or no? And what you just saw, I know, can you go back to the actual MIMS? I mean, it's very clear. This is what is now proposed for vote, and then in the consolidated report, if anything changes, it will be changed. But what you see here on the left is what is on vote. What you see here on the right is not. Okay? It's just to give some history on this. It's only to say should OASC have a MIM that's called Context Information Management, one that's called Data Models, one that's called Ecosystem Transaction Management? Maybe you think Ecosystem Transaction Management is a stupid name and you want to name it Marketplace or Pluto. That's the only thing that's on vote. Also the description here, but actually the voting ticket will only be column A, the first left column here, and then you can say yes or no. There will be no full document that you do. Yes, there will be references to understand what is meant, what is foreseen to be why even have this. But this is like the debates up to an election. You get some kind of background, but you don't vote on the background. You vote on the ticket, and that's it. I hope that clarifies, Alessandro.
Yes, we have 1 minute left for 2 remaining questions from Hannah. So apparently, I think it wasn't. So Hannah, could you just confirm that it's clear to you now whether it's per MIM? So the vote will be per MIM, indeed. So please confirm that it's clear to you now. And then a very interesting set of questions asking also from Hannah, is there some agreement on how the development of these MIMs are governed after approving the current ones? How are versions managed, code approved, etc.? To me, that is as important as selecting these first MIMs. So that is very much along the lines of what we invite as feedback, that we considered other things and opportunities regarding the MIMs. We would typically, and we're quite happy the question comes. So perhaps it would be a good idea to have the cities organize a working group around the MIMs or something like that, where these kinds of issues can be hammered out. So because in the end, it's the cities who are in charge here regarding the MIMs and how they are approved and so forth. As a secretariat, we are happy to support. The board is happy to provide guidance, but in the end, it's the cities who will kind of need to ensure those aspects. So I'm quite happy with that question, and invite maybe Hannah to make a proposal, or together with Bart or any other cities present here, on how that work could be structured, and we would be happy to support you fully in those endeavors. I think okay, good. Hannah confirms things are clear now, and I hope that yes that you wrote is also regarding the second question, to propose a kind of operational structure for governing the MIMs going forward after the vote. And I agree, is just as important as the vote. So I think that's those were all the questions for today.
Yeah, currently we're at the end of the list, and we're also at the end of our 60 minutes. So that fits quite well. Oh, yeah, Hannah is happy. Very good. All right. If there are no more questions, I would leave the floor now again to Bart to close this meeting. And again, I invite everybody to formulate feedback, comments, questions to the email address, well, to me, until the 21st of December. Thanks very much. Bart, over to you.
Thank you very much. So I would like to thank everybody for being here. Also, thank you, Leah, for the timekeeping. That's an art in itself. Thank you for the questions. I think this was the first time for us to organize this in this way, and I think we're heading in the right direction. So thank you all for your contributions and thinking along with us, and I'm looking forward to see you all in January.
Thank you very much, Bart.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. Have a nice weekend, everyone.